cultural expectations. And then go over the cultural expectations that we ran into that were a little different. So perhaps you can learn from our mistakes. All right, first off, myth versus facts. One of the first things we heard when we got here was that you could not own property in Japan. Bar none, that's a myth. You can't own property in Japan without being Japanese. The other myth we heard is that in order to own property in Japan, you had to have a Japanese spouse. That is also a myth. As SOFA, you can own property. And even if you're not SOFA, if you're not military related, you can own property here in Japan. And from one of the Facebook groups, I heard that they thought you had to climb Mount Fuji before they would let you own property. That is also a myth. But the legend goes that if you don't climb Fuji before you leave, then you're destined to come back, which is probably why I haven't climbed Fuji yet in the 9 years I've been here. So with those myths around, it used to be that, so where the myth comes from with owning the property and being Japanese is that previously, in order to get a loan in Japan, you had to have a Japanese spouse. And then after 2017, your Japanese spouse had to qualify for the home loan on their own. So that's probably where a lot of the myths came from. The Fuji thing, I don't know. I don't know where that one came from. Okay, so for the Japanese market, how it's different than those who have purchased houses in the States. The houses here in Japan, due to the weather, the different typhoon seasons, earthquakes, landslides, they're not, for the most part, built to last for 30, 50, 75 years, like you'll see homes in the States that are over 100 years old. Most of the houses here are usually torn down around the 20-year point and then rebuilt, modernized. So that's something to keep in mind when you're looking at your home, or something that you may be able to take into consideration when you're looking at a type of home to buy, whether you're going to live in this home or if it's simply an investment property, or all factors are taking place. Like in the States, the land is what has the most value. And when we're talking about those value commodities for your home, whether it's one that you want to live in, but especially if it's an investment property that you want to rent out, and if you want to rent out to SOFA especially, then things to take into consideration are its location. Is it located on an oka, on a hill? Is it located on a flat piece of land? How close is this property to transportation? Because most people in Japan don't own vehicles if you're renting to locals. And a lot of the SOFA that come don't have vehicles initially, or a lot of them are trying to live like a local and may consider not purchasing a vehicle. And if they have the option to not have to have a vehicle due to your property, then that is one more thing that makes it agreeable or more interesting for them. And then the last thing I talk about is SOFA or local. Who is your target market if this is an investment property? And even while you're living in it, who is your target market that you want to rent it to or sell it to after you leave? Because those are factors to take into consideration. Most Americans are coming here looking for more space. Japan is a city that is all about economy of size, economy of scale. So you can find larger homes, but those are usually going to be a trade-off for something. They're either going to be not near a transportation hub, so it requires you to have a car, or they're going to be a little farther from the base. When you're looking at different properties, the home listings and the floor plans are going to be in meters squared by square feet. So understand that difference and what that means as far as when you're looking, what kind of listings you want to just swipe left on because it's too small for what you're looking for, especially if you are living in it by yourself or if you're bringing a family. And then understanding tatami room measurements. I will have a slide after this that will go into detail and show pictures, but traditionally, Japanese floor plans are based on tatami size. How many tatami mats, a traditional Japanese floor covering, can go into a room. So on the right-hand side here is what a tatami mat looks like. And in the left is a floor plan. And you can see it says like 10J, which is Joe, 8 Joe, 13 Joe for the dining room and the kitchen. What that means is that 2 tatami mats creating a square can fit in that dining and kitchen room. 5 tatami mats will fit in that bedroom. And that's just a standard size of measurement that they use on their floor plans. You can go on Wikipedia and get into more detail, but on general, one Joe is about 1.6 meters, so about 5 feet, 5 by 5 feet. And that's what they're talking about. About 4 by 4 feet. Sorry, I can't do public math, but that's what they're talking about when though you see those numbers in the rooms. All right. Once again, this is just more pictures of different floor plans, and you'll see that 6.2, that 5.7, that 15.2, that has to do with the tatami mats. It doesn't mean that the home has tatami mats on the floor at all, although some do, most notably if they say a tatami room, but that is the standard measurement that they use for the floor plans, because that's just a general frame of reference that most people here understand. So finding a house. In the States, when you are looking for homes, you're generally going to go online, you're going to talk to your agent, and they're going to search the MLS listings. In the States, generally, MLS listings for homes are shared among all the agents. So whether the house is listed with Century 21, Remax, or Caldwell Banker, any agent can see all of the listings. That's not how it is here in Japan. There is no one central repository location where all of the houses for sale are listed. The agents are segregated here. So an agent is able to see the listings that are held by their brokerage house, by their company, or by other agents that work with their company. So while you're searching for a home to purchase, you maximize your chances of finding what you want by talking to more agents. The more agents from different agencies that you talk to, the wider range of options that you'll have presented to you. And then in the States, a lot of times, you'll find stuff on Zillow and you'll send the listing to your agent. There are online real estate websites here. There is no Japan Zillow, but there are different online agencies or websites that are pulling information from MLS listings. But a lot of times those listings are out of date, or they've already sold. So once again, here, the face-to-face interaction behooves you. Go into the agencies. If you're around bases, there are generally going to be agencies around base. You may have to go a little farther, or they may have to connect you to like their home office, because most of the rental agencies around base primarily only do rentals. And that's a difference here as well. In the States, an agent will a lot of times do rentals and selling. Here in Japan, what I found around the bases is that primarily they only do rentals, and they will have to connect you with another office in order to do real estate sales. And then speed. Things move fast here in Japan. So if you know what you want and you have your finances lined up in advance, then that again increases your chances of getting the house you want, because you're already ready to go to start the process. So you've done your due diligence, you've talked to a bunch of agents, you know what you want as far as transportation and location, and now it's time to actually fund the house. One of the most common ways for non-Japanese folks to buy a house is cash. That's what we did. We used cash pulled from the States, and we paid for our house in cash. It was very interesting walking around with a bag full of money. I wish I had taken a picture, but I didn't. The other option is a bank loan. Now, when I got here in 2014, SOFA could not get a bank loan at all, no matter what. I have a coworker who is also SOFA. He purchased a house in 2021. He went up and down Japan asking different banks. He could not get a loan because he was SOFA. We also tried to do a loan with multiple banks. We called and applied for at least 10, offered to put anywhere from 10 to 30% down. And simply the fact that we were SOFA, the answer was automatically a no. I'm happy to say in the last year and a half, that has changed. There are actually 2 banks right now that will do loans for SOFA residences. The first one is First Step. And the second is Mitsui Trust, the Shimbashi branch. I personally have no experience with either one of these, though I do have a coworker who is working with First Step, and he seems to be happy so far. Both locations have English speakers, so that is a place for you to start if you're interested in purchasing a home and you don't have the cash available to pay for it out of pocket. All right, so if you do choose the cash option, or you get a loan, or you borrow from someone in the States, the next issue and challenge you're going to face is getting the money here to Japan. So not only are there the fees associated with wiring the money, if you've done any kind of banking with Japan in the last 3 years, you know that money laundering has been a big concern, and they've tightened down on a lot of banking transactions requiring more proof and more paperwork. When we were trying to wire the money to our own bank account, we use Bank of Yokohama. They actually wanted 6 months of statements to prove where the money had come from. And they wanted to see that the money had been in my account for 6 months. Same thing with wiring it to other people. We ended up going through Wise, and then we tried to wire it to the bank, the seller's bank, and it kept getting denied. We ended up having to wire it back to ourselves and pick a different bank and pay in cash. So be prepared for currency exchange fees. Make sure it's clear how they want to transfer the money in the first place. Realize that that's going to take some time as they deal with large sums of money if you're not dealing with a Japanese bank. Funny anecdote, when we finally got the yen and I gave it to my agent, they gave it to the seller's agent and gave it to the owner of the house. And when he took it to his bank wouldn't accept the bag full of cash. So he actually ended up having to give it back to my agent to put it into the account for their agency and wire it to his bank. So with the exchange fees and the currency rates, just be aware that the money that you have, it will go farther because the exchange rate is currently in the favor of the US dollar, but there are going to be fees associated with it. And if you're moving large sums of money, that exchange rate and that fee can add up to a lot. So just account for that additional cash. Cultural differences. So buying a home in Japan, one of the things I didn't even think about was the fact that, some things are going to be slightly different. And all of this can be avoided by simply asking the question. If you don't speak Japanese, or you don't have a spouse or a friend who speaks Japanese, make sure that you bring a translator. Hire someone that works for you, so that they have your best interests in mind and you can get all of your questions answered and ensure that you are covered in understanding what is expected of you. Here in Japan, the agent fees for the seller are covered by the seller, but the buyer is generally covered by the buyer. Whereas in the States, usually buyer and seller agent fees are covered by the seller. That was just an unexpected expense that we didn't account for. In Japan, the house does not come with any appliances. So for the most part, that's something that you need to discuss when you're looking at the house. If there's a stove in there, then make sure, ask, is that stove going to stay? When we looked at most of our houses, there was no refrigerator, there's no washer, there's no dryer, while those things are common in the US. So those are also expenses that you will have to take into account when you are budgeting how much money you want to spend on a house. Air conditioning units. Japan does not have centralized air. Even in newer builds, they have air conditioning units like they have in Hawaii or in Guam. So purchasing air cons, if they're not in the home, if they are in the home, ask the question, are they going to stay? So that it's clear for both you and the seller what is and isn't in the home. They do have home insurance here that you can purchase, as US insurance won't be valid here. So you'll have to go with a local company. And then they, like in the States, they have different levels of insurance based on how much protection you want. They also have a 7-day policy. So 7 days before you close, you can walk through the home again and verify that everything you discussed as being there is there, and that everything works. And then lastly, I haven't run into a lot of HOAs, but a lot of the Japanese neighborhoods do have neighborhood associations. It's a way to connect the community and get involved and know each other. They send notices and information around mailbox to mailbox. You will be put onto the trash rotation to clean up around the local trash areas. Those who've been in Japan know what I mean, since we have to separate our trash and there's a central location where they come and pick it up. So these are just some of the things to keep in mind when you're buying, so that you're not hit with a complete culture shock and misunderstanding, and that you start your new neighborhood and your new home on the best foot with your neighbors. Okay, so we covered a lot of stuff, and I know the question people probably are asking is, was it worth it? 100% yes. It was definitely worth it. We had a lot of lessons learned. We took some knocks and some bumps. There was a lot of frustration, a couple of tears. But at the end of the day, the first night in my home, it was nice to say and know that it's mine. So I hope that you found this helpful, and I can't wait for the Q&A session. Arigatou gozaimasu.
All righty, Ritarsha, let me make sure I am still sharing. All righty. Ritarsha, are you seeing my screen now with your face up on there again and your bio? Awesome. So I left the bio up. I started the recording just a hair late for you guys. So this is a just to put this in the recording for everybody. Ritarsha, I want to thank you for your amazing presentation. Again, buying property in Japan is obviously a very popular topic, and it's something that honestly I have got a fair amount of experience investing in real estate, but I have no idea about buying property in Japan. So give me 1 second. I've got some questions on the board. For those of you that have questions, so we've got 78 people in here right now. So obviously we need to keep it kind of organized. So if you would please either raise your hand and I will call on you, or place your question in the chat. We do have a fair amount of time for questions. This presentation is supposed to go on through 10 o'clock. So we've got about 40 minutes for questions. And something tells me that we're going to have a full 40 minutes of questions. So without further ado, I am going to allow people to, let me see, unmute yourselves. So please be respectful of everybody else. And when I call on you, just unmute yourself and ask your question. So first up, we have Whitney Hayes from Yokota. If you want to go ahead and ask Ritarsha your question, please.
Hey, Ritarsha, thanks for that briefing. That was freaking excellent. I just have one question because you answered my other one in the briefing, but my only one left is if you buy a property in Japan and your SOFA status ends, if you're a civilian and your contract's up, or you have to PCS back, what does that look like as far as your property rights? If you, I don't know if you can speak to that, but I was just curious.
Yep. So you still own the property is yours. You would have to decide then, like for us, if we have to leave, we're going to work with a property management company. We made sure that our house met base requirements to be rented to other SOFA. So we would go with a property management company. They would be our agent, just like a property manager in the States. They would have our house. We would leave for us, because now for at least for Yokosuka, if you are renting the SOFA, the owner is required to provide all the appliances. So we have air cons in all the rooms. We would leave the fridge here, the washer and the dryer, the stove is here. We have cabinets, additional cabinets that we've added. We would leave all of that here for future tenants. And then it would be just like with owning property in the States. So the property manager would deposit our money into our Japanese bank account. And then we would either leave the money there or work with Wise to convert it to US dollars and make sure that we let our tax accountant know and then claim it on taxes as income.
Cool. Thanks, Ritarsha.
Whitney, thank you for your question. Ritarsha, the next one I got for you looks like it's from Jared Allen. He asked, it seems to be basically just information on abandoned houses, and if you have any information on the process of securing those or purchasing those.
You have to go through this government thing.
Okay, so my husband actually listened to that more than I did. There are a lot of abandoned houses here in Japan. Most of those are further out in the Inaka, the countryside. If you're on Instagram, there is a guy who does it a lot. He's an agent, Cheap Houses Japan. So a lot of those are further, and then a lot of them also have stipulations, like you have to stay in the prefecture or the town for X amount of time, because it's really more about revitalizing that area, more so than just investing. So I don't know very much about it because that wasn't really my market, but from the little we did look into, that's what's required. So those houses, a lot of times, even though you can buy them for maybe like $1, they're probably going to be a total gut and tear down, a total gut and redo, or you're going to have to tear it down and rebuild. And then they want you to stay in those cities and those towns to help revitalize it.
That sounds like a lot of, or pretty similar to what they've been doing, I think, in Italy and some other countries where they've had these abandoned houses, for 100, 150 years, and they're trying to get people back in. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yep.
That's exactly what it is.
That's exactly what it is.
Awesome. And in addition to that, I hear somebody in the background that keeps making comments. We're going to have to ask that individual, he's going to need to come onto the screen and introduce himself.
I'm at work.
He's shy.
Alrighty.
He's actually doing his drill stuff. So he's just chipping in if there's some stuff that I don't know.
No worries. No worries. We appreciate all the information. Sherry Evans, I have a raised hand from you.
Yeah, so Ritarsha, excited for you. Your presentation made me think of two things that I had questions about. One is, did you have a traditional home inspection like we do in the US when we're purchasing a home? Is that something they do with the home buying process here in Japan?
Yes, I did. I went to a local American Japanese real estate agent that I know, and I used his home inspector. So I actually have a home inspection report. There were things that need to be worked on, but nothing that was a red flag. And so we did, once we were settled on this home, I did have a home inspection done, and I have that report in Japanese that I got translated, and that we're slowly working our way down on things that need to be fixed. Things that need to be updated. And they were minor things like, the gutters need to be cleaned, the house needs to be power washed, there's a loose screw here, but there were no major safety concerns or things like that. But yes, we did get a home inspection.
And then the second part of my question was appraisal. Is there an appraisal process in Japan similar to what we're used to in the States as it relates to buying and ensuring that we're buying at market rate? So how does a novice ensure that they're buying a house that's worth what's being asked?
There are appraisals here, but it's different. It's generally, I know what you're talking about, and it's not how it is in the States. It was more so, what are the other prices of the homes around you? And then the appraisal is more like I talked about earlier, at least from what we saw when we were looking at houses, in relation to those variables, the proximity to train, the proximity to how flat it was or how high it was, different areas. You can look at different areas in the home markets, and that's what we used more than anything else to determine the home's value, what the houses were, who that sold. We used comps more than anything else.
And final question, I know there are others waiting. Did you negotiate your purchase price? Or is that a thing here in Japan? You know how there can be the list price, but then you might negotiate it down. Or can you talk to culturally what you should do or what you should expect in that part of the transaction?
So I'll slide in on this one. I'm Matthew Furqan, the spouse. I dealt with most of the negotiation portion of it, and actually it goes through your agent. So you'll tell them that based on whatever reason you're coming from negotiation. Specifically for our house, I think it was either the fact that the roof needed some work done or something of nature. But I thought I want to pay like 20,000 less. If not paying 20,000 less, I'm not buying it. So I went to the agent, and he basically takes your inputs and he'll negotiate what he can get from the seller, and he'll come back with a value, just like anywhere else. You go through your agent and say, hey, I don't want to pay that much, and they'll see what they can get for you. And when it goes toward, I know you had the previous question about appraisals, specifically for the appraisals of the house. They do multiple methods in Japan. They have something very similar to the comp method, where, as my wife discussed, the selling prices of a house in the area. But they also have a method where they appraise the actual value of the home versus the value of the land, and give you another appraisal value based off those two separate items. So you'll have to. I can't tell you the actual appraisal teams, but that when I was researching online, they were telling me there were multiple options to do appraisals, the traditional US version, and then the land and structure based appraisal. So that is an option. You'll just have to find a team that'll be willing to do the appraisals in whichever version you choose.
Okay, thanks so much. That's all I had.
Gary, thank you for your awesome questions.
You got your wish, Derek.
Ritarsha actually had Jacob Thomas. He actually asked if he could add on to the appraisal and inspection piece. Apparently he is going through that right now with his agent. So it looks like you and him might get a little back and forth for the betterment of the group. So Mr. Thomas, if you can unmute yourself and expound on what you got.
Yeah, sure. Hey, everyone. Jake Thomas. I'm retired Navy. I live up in the Gunma Prefecture, just north of the Saitama border. So I am a Japanese resident, but since I don't have a job here in Japan yet, financially speaking, I'm a zero income person according to the Japanese government. And my wife and I are in the second stage of purchasing a house right now. So we found a home. We passed stage one. So our Fudo-san, our real estate agent, was like, yep, you guys are eligible to buy the home. We are now in the banking stage to see if the bank will grant us the loan. And according to our Fudo-san, our agent, the way this is going to work is if you're taking the loan from the bank is you send all the required paperwork. I can't tell you exactly what that is. I know it's like my wife's income because she has a job. We included mine just for the heck of it and a few other pieces. And we sent that off to the bank. If they say, okay, that we're eligible for the loan, then the bank is going to send their inspector to the property to conduct the inspection. Now, if their inspector says that the home is of value, then they will proceed with the loan. If their housing inspector says that it is not of value, then they will not proceed with the loan. So I guess depending on what route and the experiences you're having, either the bank is going to do the inspection or you source your own inspector. It just it seems like it's going to depend depending on how you're paying, how you're financing and whatnot. So just a little something for the group. Some of it's kind of all inclusive. Some of it, I guess, is not. So just a little piece there. If anybody's got anything to add on to that or maybe some clarity. But that is my understanding according to what our agent told us of how the loan and the inspection process works. We go and like each stage is a series of steps.
Yeah, sounds about.
Yeah, that's about, so, as I stated before, because I am SOFA, we went through the cash value option, but my SOFA coworker who is currently working with First Step to get a loan is going through the same process as you. He had to present all his financials and everything. And then the bank is he's still looking for a house, but that was the next stage. And they're actually walking him through step by step. For him as SOFA, I think what the bank is doing something a little different, whereas you're a PR, but they do sit down and explain all of this in the step and process for you. But yeah, so either way, you're definitely going to do a home inspection and an appraisal.
Mr. Thomas, I appreciate your input. I think I speak for Ritarsha on that as well, that the more experience that we have on this matter, it's more enlightening for all of us. So thanks for sharing that and having the conversation. I'm going to mess up some of these names, so I apologize in advance. And if I say the wrong thing, just I mean the best, I promise. So Miss Dupree, I'm
Yeah,
not going to try to say your first name. I'm sorry.
it's Shaniqua.
Okay. That's what I thought. That's what I thought. But I was like, nope, I'd rather just say Miss Dupree and, try to be respectful and that way I'm good to go.
All right. Well, my question is about construction. So the people who live in Japan or have lived there, we know that it's the Home Depot feel, but everything that's there at the Home Depot like stores is like super small. Like it's like a portion of the larger items here in Japan. So if something happened to your place, how would you get it fixed?
In like external construction
Like
or
anything, like the walls. I know like here in Japan or here in the States, we have drywall, but over there they have something else. I
so
think
they have drywall, they have paper, they have, so I mean all of the contractors and the maintenance people. Is someone else unmuted? Sorry, there's that weird echo.
I think it was coming from hers. I just muted it real quick so you
Okay.
could speak.
All of the contractors and everything that exists in the States exists here. So like we have a local construction store, D2, and it's also homes. And just like just like homes, it's like Home Depot and Lowe's in the States, they have contractors that advertise at those stores. Also, your agent is a good resource. There's actually a really cool Facebook group out here called Building and Renovating a House in Japan. And just being on that Facebook group and lurking, I've learned a lot. They also recommend handymen and things like that. There is a organization that advertises in the mailers called Benri, which means convenience. They're online, but they do almost everything. They do power washing, they do roof repair, they do air conditioning installation. And then being in those groups and networking and talking to other people who own houses here is another way to find handymen and professionals to do the things you need. I have a coworker, he's Japanese, but he was raised in America. He owns a house here. We pass back and forth maintenance people and experiences. So if you meet other Americans who own property, who they've used, who they recommend, is a way to build your team. Although the language barrier is a problem, there are ways. It's an inconvenience. My husband said it's an inconvenience more than it's a problem. But that same networking skill, building your team that you utilize for the real estate options in the States, works perfectly here. You may need to find a translator or brush up on your Japanese to get you over the initial hump. But everything that exists in the States exists in some form here. It's just a matter of finding it.
Ms. Dupree, did that answer your question?
it sure did. I also wanted to mention that there's a guy in Yokosuka. I don't know if he's still there. He's like the handyman of Yokosuka. He like fixes up different places. Would he be like I guess a good resource as well? Or like, is there a group specifically for handymen?
So I guess it would depend on what you need done. There are a bunch of spouses on Yokosuka. Hold a second. There are a bunch of spouses on Yokosuka that were handymen in the States. I've used them to do simple things. There are carpenters on base. So, it's all about using your network and then a risk calculus, because those people may or may not be insured. So like if I'm going to have someone do my roof, I'm not probably going to use someone from the States, regardless of how skilled they are, because they're not going to carry Japanese insurance unless they do carry Japanese insurance. But for major home improvements, I'm probably going to go with a local that has the insurance and the warranty and things like that. For something quick and simple, I probably would go with a skilled laborer or a spouse on base that, can show examples of their work. So it just depends on what you need and the risk calculus for it.
Okay, thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you for that awesome question. As Ritarsha mentioned earlier, and somebody was asking about abandoned houses, right? So some of those are going to need total cut jobs. So being able to source some contractors and figuring out where that stuff is very important. I've got a question on the chat from Jared Allen. It's does anybody know the BAH or LQA max? So Ritarsha, I'll send that one your way.
So that's a varied question. It depends on rank, officer or enlisted, but I can tell you that the civilians make twice as much. Yeah, whatever you make as an enlisted, if you find the civilian equivalent, they make twice as much. So a GS 12 makes about 4,000 a month in LQA. And 04 makes about 2,000.
So what you're saying is buy some nice houses and rent it to the civilians.
Yes.
Awesome. All
But
right.
not necessarily.
plan.
So you could buy, if it's just strictly for investment, or you're a single sailor or a single person, you could buy, we were looking at condos. So an 800 square foot, 2-bedroom condo was going for around 40 to 50K US. That would rent to an E5, E6 sailor that was single for about $1,500 to $1,700 a month. So you could still make money, which is the goal for this. You could still make money without a large initial investment. So, you know, if you had the cash, you could have your place that you're living in, buy another property that's a smaller property, turn around and rent it out to, you know, someone who could afford it, and still have, you know, the government paying you money for your place that you're living in and making money from the other place you own that you're renting out to someone else.
Wow. Yeah, that's a great strategy there.
Jared, thank you for the question.
Mhm.
All right. So Ritarsha, I've got somebody on here that's asking for the links to the banks that you mentioned regarding financing the properties. Can you throw those in the chat when we're done?
Yes, I have the link for One First Step. I don't have a link for the Shimbashi branch. That was told to me by another person when I posted this the Zoom meeting. They mentioned that the Shimbashi branch of Sansui Bank, is it? Hold on a second. But I will post a link for First Step.
Awesome. And I think we can probably, if we can find that second link, we can get that sent out when we send out the recording for all the advertising for that.
Yep.
All righty. Next, I have Jeffrey Gomez.
Hello. Two-part question. So the first one, I'm sure we could get off on a whole tangent about it, but you were mentioning about the abandoned houses and how there's stipulations or restrictions, and you know, for instance, you might have to live in said prefecture. Where can we find more information on it? For example, if we wanted to buy one of those abandoned houses, to see those stipulations in the event like we wanted to try to turn it into an Airbnb, knowing that we're not going to be able to live within that area.
I would honestly Google it.
Google
if you're on Instagram, the cheap houses in Japan that Kyle put, he talks about it a lot. He might have better resources. But like if you just Google Government of Japan website talks about it. My husband said there's information there about it, and that might be able to give you more information on what the requirements are. It's going to vary also by location and prefecture. So
okay, yeah, easy enough. The second question is, so here in previous years, stateside with the lower interest rates, it was actually investment properties were cash flowing every month. Is that the case also in Japan? Is it actually cash flowing, or is it more of a long-term strategy where you're kind of just sitting on this house, collecting the rent, getting paid because you're making a little bit extra money? Let's just rewind. Does it cash flow? Is it worth?
So it depends. It depends on the size of the house, what your OHA or LQA rate is, if this is your primary residence or if this is an investment property. So if it's an investment property and you buy a smaller unit and you have tenants in it, then once you make back your initial investment, it's cash flow. If it's a property you're living in, depending on what you purchased it for, what the exchange rate was, and how much your OHA or LQA is, it could be cash flowing or you might be breaking even. For us, this was a long-term strategy. So we're cash flowing right now, but not a large amount. But this is a home that will rent well to civilians if we have to leave. This is not a forever home, but it is better than the base rental that I was living in, crushed in for 7 years.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And
Oh,
Ritarsha,
I
just,
think-
sorry, go
Sorry,
ahead.
I think you also mentioned Airbnb. I'm not sure. Just be aware Airbnbs are hard here. They've gone through a similar restriction to what Hawaii has done. Not as locked down, but there are a lot of steps to jump through if you want to Airbnb property. You can, if you are already an Airbnb host, or you can just Google Airbnb in Japan and a lot of different articles will come up, but you have to have a registration number and a lot of other things to be an Airbnb host in Japan.
Okay.
Jeffrey, thank you for the awesome question. I'm actually going to pivot on that because you guys asked about Airbnb. Rob from Niseko, I actually know him, or I don't know him personally, but I know he's got a property up in Niseko that he rents. I'm not sure if it's Airbnb or not, but I'm going to turn it over to him real quick. He might be able to open up the floor a little bit with regards to buying a property at Airbnb in Japan. Rob, are you able to unmute?
I'm still here. Wow, yes. The the laws changed for Airbnb probably worldwide in about 2018. I had 3 Airbnbs. It was the Wild West. It was awesome. But when the laws changed, it required you to get a license. The one thing I will say is if you buy a house in Japan, make sure one of the questions to ask is, can you Airbnb it? Because most of them are in zones. So it'll tend to be more in a city center where you may or may not be able to Airbnb it. Most of the time out in the country, it's no problem. So that's one question to ask before buying a house, for sure. Like in the ski resort of Furano, Japan in central Hokkaido, there was a house 600 meters from the ski area, and it was not eligible to Airbnb, but a house 800 meters from the ski area was able to Airbnb. So your mileage may vary. That's all I have.
Rob, thanks for the inject there and letting me call on you. Like I said, I know you've got that property up there that maybe I need to come visit sometime when I come up to Niseko. So,
all right.
All right, let's see who
I had one more comment on something else, if I can have the floor for a second. I think it's very important to differentiate between buying a house that you'll rent out to sofa people and buying a house that you'll never ever rent to sofa people. It's two different worlds. The house that you'll rent to sofa people might cost over $400,000 because it has to be good. And it has to, of course, meet base requirements and inspections. The house that you rent out to anybody but sofa, you can get it for $10,000 or $20,000 maybe, or something like that. And it's a lot easier. So I think most people in this group hopefully are looking to buy a house for themselves. But I just think it's important to differentiate between those two things. That's all.
Thank you. And you are absolutely right. The requirements and everything for renting to sofa, you're generally the house you're living in would turn around and rent to sofa. So that is a different ball game. Which is, I think in the beginning of my brief, I said, know your market, understand what it is, who your target audience is, and then make those decisions accordingly. But thank you for backing me up. I appreciate it.
Ritarsha, I'm actually going to ask a question now with regard to that. Privilege of being the host, I get to ask questions whenever I want to, right?
Yep.
What is the difference between a house that can rent to SOFA and a house that can't? What is driving, that $10,000 versus $400,000 price? Is one of them paper walls and the other one's concrete walls, or what are we looking at here?
So any house that's rented to SOFA is inspected by the base, and you can easily go to your housing office and get that limit. But they also have safety concerns about how close to the street a house can be, how close to a train station a house can be, how many steps. So, if you've been in Japan for a while, you know that some of these houses are like mountain goat style, where the only way to get to it is like 80,000 steps to the top, and you're only taking home one orange, and that's what the family's going to live off, because you're not carrying groceries up 80,000 steps. So they limit that for the protection of the SOFA members. They also require the owners to provide, the air conditioning units, the refrigerator, the washer and dryer, so that those conveniences are already in the home for the members who are renting, because they don't know the language, they don't know the market, they don't know where you get it from me. That's my hairstylist. Where to go buy these things. So a lot of the restrictions that are set and that higher price cost is for all those amenities for the Americans. Generally, homes rented to SOFA require you to have at least one parking spot. And if it's not actually on the property, then it's within a 5-minute walk of the property. And that's something that the owner negotiates for you. So that difference in price is because the base is already ensured that the things that you are used to coming from America are already in place for your convenience and for ease of transition in and out of a foreign country. Whereas for a Japanese resident, that stuff isn't there. It's not uncommon for a Japanese renter to move into an apartment and there's no light bulbs, there's no air con, there's no fridge. So you may have to go find your own fridge. You may have to go find, more cabinets and things like that. So they take care of all of that for you so that you don't have to worry about it.
Gotcha. I appreciate it. I feel like you might have expounded on that during the briefing, so apologies.
No worries.
I'm doing like 10 things at once usually when you're talking, so my apologies if that was already explained. Alrighty, so we're coming up on it looks like 9:50. So I've got 3 hands raised and a metric ton of questions for you. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll go ahead and do 3 more questions. We'll go through the last couple of slides. For those of you that are here, obviously there's a lot of questions. You don't have to leave. I will keep this up so you guys can continue conversing with each other and Ritarsha, but to keep us on track for at least the recording and for the presentation, I'll do 3 more and then move forward, and then we'll open it up, kind of all hands on deck after that. So the first one I have is Nicholas Horn. I like your last name. I'm just gonna have to say you spelled it wrong though. There's not supposed to be an E on there, so I'm gonna need you to change that, sir.
Yeah, right. I know there's an E at the end. It's a quick question. I don't think it was mentioned yet. What are the tax implications on buying properties there?
So since I am SOFA, I will have to pay taxes on my so you have to report taxes over a certain amount to the accountant. According to my accountant, we had less than, what was it, 10,000, I think? What we had to report to him for the Japanese accounts. If you have anything more than $10,000 in your bank account, then you have to report it to your American taxes. So for right now, since we're barely cash flowing, and that money is being paid to me through my OHA, the Japanese transactions are not applicable at this time. If I had just pure investment property, Then I would have to sit down with my tax attorney and figure out how we're going to make this work. And then whether or not, I mean, there are different options and strategies, which I didn't really go into on this brief, such as forming like a Japanese business and leaving that money in the Japanese business. And then you would pay money when you move that from Japan to America. So it would just, for that, honestly, I would advise you to talk to a international tax professional. I am not that.
Good to go. Thank you.
Nicholas, thank you for your question and for the friendly banter with the misspelled last name, sir. All right, Mr. Juan Vasco. Hopefully I said that correctly.
Yeah, Derek, thanks, man. So Ritarsha, I know that we kind of expanded on this a little bit in the chat. I am not SOFA status, nor am I a permanent resident, which you refer to on there. Am I still eligible to finance and buy property?
So are you here under a work visa?
None of the above. I'm currently stateside. I was previously in Japan and would like to purchase property.
Okay, so you don't have to be here, but your options are probably limited to paying in cash, or which means that you could either have the cash on yourself or pull from investment opportunities that you have here. You would basically need to find an intermediary to work and represent you as you purchase the home. And then you would have to work on or figure out a way to get the money from your Japanese account to your American account. And I also don't know if they do virtual closings here. I would recommend yeah, I don't know. I have not tried to do a virtual closing here. Some of the things as far as technology and things that are common in the States are not common here in Japan. Jacob, do you have any idea? Sorry, Jacob, I think it's owns the Airbnb.
Say again?
Do you have any idea about virtual closings or things like that? How someone not physically here, would they be able to purchase property?
My understanding is that it's a no-go. I haven't ventured too far down that hole, but even some of my friends that were up in Misawa when I was there on detachment last year, it's kind of how I got into this whole thing before retiring. General understanding is that if you're not present, it's incredibly harder than what it already is to do it as a non-resident, and especially as a non-resident. Because I know obviously SOPA has its own hoops. Me being a resident, I still have my own hoops. So to not have any of that, I can only imagine it'll be additional issues. I can't say for sure what they'll be.
Thank you. Yeah, that I would concur with everything he said.
Okay. Thanks for the answer.
Awesome. Juan, thank you for your question. And I think our last question for, again, the formal portion of this, Sheila Weiser. Again, hopefully I pronounced that correctly. You get to be the last one.
Thank you. It's Weezer, but that's fine. Since
My
we're talking about name
apologies.
pronunciation. No worries, no worries. Hey, Ritarsha.
Hi, Sheila.
Yeah, we know each other personally. That's why I'm saying that. I wanted to talk about two things. Number one, we were talking about the differences between what Americans expect in a home and what may not be there in terms of buying or renting to SOFA, and what the bases, what the military bases require in terms of what you need to have in your home. Even as renting, because we currently, my husband is active duty and we live off base in a home. One of the things that we found very interesting is that just for people's awareness, Ritarsha mentioned the air cons and the refrigerators and the stoves. One thing that is very common in Japanese homes is that some bathrooms may not have hot water in the sinks. And so the military bases absolutely require They will not, like, if a owner wants to rent to SOFA status people, all the sinks are supposed to have a hot water pipe and hot water available in said sink. And so just to put that out there for people who are not aware, these tiny little differences that are based in cultural differences, things that we may not think about as Americans, we expect hot water in every single sink. They may not have that. And so, like Ritarsha said, know your audience, know who you are marketing towards, and what may be different if you just plan on living there. You may have to install hot water access to sinks if you're just buying to live in a place yourself. And then the last question, or a question that I had for Ritarsha, that I wanted to put up here, even though I can ask her personally. But Ritarsha, what was your experience in regards to price differences compared to the US? Obviously, knowing that prices are regionally affected. That's true in America, that's true here in Japan. But seeing as how we are in Yokosuka and it's a fairly big city and easy access to Tokyo and such, what have you seen in your experience in regards to price comparison versus buying a house stateside?
Okay. So I saw that it was a lot of the same things. So we looked at homes. The home we currently live in is about 1,600 square feet. For Japan, that's a big house. For America, that's probably an average size house, I would say, depending on your goals. After living here for so long, 1,600 is the largest that I ever want to buy, because a bigger house is just more to clean. Now, depending on your family size, that may shift. Ours ended up costing us all in, Matt, $225K. I think someone asked it in the chat too. $225K US is what we put in, and that's closing fees and everything combined. That, what do you say?
You had the 4 for 3 deal.
Yeah, so when we brought our cash from US to Japanese yen, it was like a 4-to-3 ratio. So, yeah, but the home prices do vary. We looked at houses that were less than that. If you're familiar with Yokosuka, there's an area called Mabori Kaigan, which is like Little America. Homes over there, even crappy homes, like the home I moved out of that was 1,100 square feet, would sell for around 400 US. So it depends on, yeah, Derek, I saw your face. Yeah. So it depends on the location. And so like Mabori Kaigan is Little America, and Japanese homeowners there actively pursue Americans, and of the Americans, they pursue the civilians. So when someone moves out, if they're living in an older house, they'll tear it down and you'll see a McMansion pop up, something that is like 1,700 square feet, 4 bedrooms. So it just depends. You once again can get, more space. We live I'm 20 minutes from base, but I live on a hill. I don't have steps, but I do live on a hill. I am 12 minutes from the train station. So we took all of that into account when we were purchasing our property, because we do want to rent to SOFA. We all, we're a little further from base, but we have 3 parking spots. I intend to add a deck onto our property to make it, more palatable.
Platypus.
One of the benefits of our home is that there is a lot of storage, and even outside, we live on a hill, so my driveway is hollow. So the entire space under my driveway is outdoor storage, something you don't get in Japan, which is another rental feature for civilians. The previous owner actually went in with like heavy duty plastic and 2x4s, and he enclosed it. So it's like a shed. So it just, it depends on the area you're looking for and the commodities that are included. Distance of transportation, flatness, closeness to the water, closeness to base or whatever hub center you're looking for. All those will play a factor. Oh, I did want to say, Sheila, you made me think about the fact it is not standard. One of the things the base looks for as well is hot water. So she talked about hot water in the sinks, but in my house, the house we live in right now, the hookup upstairs for the washer machine doesn't have hot water. It's cold water only. Even though right next to my washing machine hookup is a sink with hot and cold water. So at some point, I will have to go in and tap off of the hot water line if I want hot water in my washing machine. So.
Well, Ritarsha, I absolutely love your passion on this topic. And I'm sure everybody else does as well. Unfortunately, again, I'm not trying to stay here all day. I don't think you are either, but we will keep this open. I want to thank everybody for asking some amazing questions. I have learned more about this topic than I ever thought I even wanted to know. And I greatly appreciate Ritarsha taking the time to answer the questions and obviously provide the presentation. That being said, up on your screen, you should see a QR code. We ask that if you guys participated today and join us, that you give us a little bit of feedback, right? Try to make this a better event for future participants. If there's something you like, put it in there. If there's something you didn't, put it in there. Any feedback is good feedback. So please take a quick picture of that QR code. And if you want to do the survey later, I think it's less than 10 questions. So it should
2 minutes.
Yeah, shouldn't take you more than 2 minutes. And again, feedback is greatly appreciated. And I'm gonna turn the floor over to you so you can explain our coming soon post.
Yeah, so for all of you who joined us today, you get a sneak peek. So just a little perk. So we are going to branch off and we have a Asia Pacific. So for those of you already familiar with ADPI, we have the main page and we are going to have a separate page just for the Asia Pacific community. So it is not live yet. It is up. So I'm actually going to throw it here in the chat right now. And so I will give you the link. So feel free to go there, and oops, I'll send it here in the link in just a minute. But basically, go ahead and go there. Feel free to add, but just know that it's not live. We're gonna get that going here in the next couple of weeks, and so you'll get more. But if you like what you saw today, and you want to be a part of other topics that are relevant to this, everything we do is really for our region, for all of us who are here living overseas, between Japan, Korea, Guam. We've even had some people, in Singapore, whatnot, having interest. So please feel free to join us there. And again, just great news for you guys to join us.
Thank you for expounding upon the exciting newcomings of ADPI. I'll actually turn it over to you for this one as well. Have fun.
Have another one. All right. Oh, and in order to do these virtual events, it actually requires a great deal of effort. It takes about a minimum of 4 just to hit bare minimum, but to really pull out, you saw 70 some today. There's a lot of coordination, a lot of effort that goes into making it not just happen but successful. So that is made possible by this team right here. So what you're seeing in front of you is the team overall. If you see, you can see to the right the legend that shows people who are leaving. So Sherry, who was on here, she had some excellent questions. Even though she's not going to be here in Japan anymore, she's still joining us out of JBLM, so out of Washington now. So because of the value she sees in this group, we do have some openings. So for those of you who are in Korea, or we also have an opening over in Sasebo. If you like what we're doing and you want to be involved in the behind the scenes, and also just the engagement on resources that we have to pull on in order to make this possible, please feel free to reach out to me or anybody else as a virtual background, and we'll sit down with you and we'll tell you more about who we are, what we do, why we do it, and see if that's something you'd like to be a part of.
Awesome. Look at all these awesome people working together. If you'd like to come join us, listen to what Ann said.
Oh, I just dropped the link on the Facebook group. So please, again, check that out. Feel free to add it. But again, just know that we're still a couple weeks out, but you get first pick. No one else knows about this, but you guys.
Awesome. And again, thank you for taking the time to give us a heads up about some exciting news. So with that being said, I want to take the time to thank first our guest speaker, Ritarsha. She took time out of her day to, explain this process that she's gone through personally with us. So again, Ritarsha, thank you for your time. To all the other ADPI hosts that are here, again, thank you for taking your time as well. I could not host this without you guys, and we would not be able to have a successful event without the help that Ann and the other host provide in setting these events up. I'd also like to shout out to Kyle Stanton. He's our marketing coordinator, and he has been the one that has been dropping the crazy memes all over the place and getting max participation. So again, I just want to take the time to say thank you guys. And it has been fun today. With that being said, I am going to open up the floor. I will leave the meeting up. So for as long as anybody wants to talk. So this does not have to be about just talking about Japan property. This can be if you want to network, if you want to ask general real estate questions, if you want to talk Ritarsha's ear off about why the Japanese person stole your AC system before you moved in. This is your chance to do that. So I will leave this up and I will go ahead and
if you could
stop the
go
recording.
ahead and, go ahead and stop recording. And then if you could close your screen so that way we could see the group at large.